Hey young humans, welcome back to the wonderful world of plants. During this school year in science, we've learned a lot about plants. Our big puzzling phenomena, our question that we've been trying to investigate together has been all about apple trees. Our puzzling phenomena has been, how do apple trees, animals, and insects work together to make new apple trees? If a new apple tree grows and no human planted it, how did it grow? How did it get there? That is the puzzling phenomena that we have been studying together, and I am really excited to kind of end the year by having kind of a grand finale of everything that you've learned to solve this mystery. We'll start that today by reading this book, How Do Apple Trees Grow? And then in my next video, which will be our last video of the year, I'll kind of put all of your ideas together for a grand finale video. But I'll kind of kick that off by reading this story with you today. How do apple trees grow? When you bite into a juicy apple, you're eating part of a flower. Fruit comes from a flower. I remember we watched some of us, those time-lapse videos of a flower becoming a fruit after it was pollinated. In winter, an apple tree is bare. It's hard to imagine it covered with flowers or fruit. But even in the cold and snow, tiny leaf buds and flowers are waiting to open. Inside each leaf bud are tiny curled up leaves. Inside each flower bud are all the parts of an apple flower. You can see them right there. It's kind of like a diagram that we practiced using in our class where we labeled our pictures. Apple flowers are pink and white and sweet to smell, and each flower is the beginning of an apple. When spring comes, there are more hours of sunlight. The days are longer and warmer. The leaf buds open. Tiny green leaves appear on each twig. When the apple tree is covered in leaves, the flower buds begin to open. So this reminds me of our science tree that we went outside to observe, I think 2 or 3 times. The buds were tiny and tight and small, and they got a little bit bigger. But then we had to stop going to school before we were able to see them open, like this page is talking about, into leaves, and then other ones into flowers. Up close, you can see bunches of small pink and white flowers at the end of each twig. Each flower can become an apple, but all the right things must happen first. An apple flower has many parts, and each has a special job to do. These are the apple flower buds, and the outside of the buds are called the sepals. Those are special leaves that cover the closed flower. Around the outside are the sepals. They form a little cup to protect the rest of the flower. As the flower blossoms, the sepals open too. The pretty colored petals and sweet flowery smell bring many insects and birds to the apple tree. These animal helpers are needed for flowers to make fruit. So we also learned about pollinators and how important pollinators are to help make fruit. And we even, in our class, did some fun quizzes in our class meeting for what animals help to pollinate different fruits. I know we were all really surprised that wild bananas are pollinated by bats. Inside each flower are the male and female parts that make a new apple grow. The male parts are called stamens. Each flower has many stamens. If you look inside an apple flower, you can see all the stamens sticking up in a circle. So they describe it one way, but how I think of it is that the stamens are the ones with the pollen. They're on the outside. And then we'll get to see a close-up picture on the next page. Whoa. Do you see all that pollen on there? At the top of each stamen, pollen is made. Pollen is a yellow powder. Each flower has thousands of pollen grains. Each grain of pollen holds male cells. I'll let you see the picture on this page while I read on the other page. The female part of the flower is called the pistil. You can see some of the pistil right at the center of the flower. The pistil has tiny tubes with sticky tops. At the bottom of the flower, out of sight, these tiny tubes meet down here. The place where the tubes meet is the ovary. The ovary is the part of the pistil that holds the female cells. The ovary will become the inside core of the apple. So in our video where we saw a flower fast forward to become what fruit was it? Do you remember? Think to yourself. Do you remember what it was? Oh, I think I do. Let's say it on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Pear. A pear fruit. So we saw after a flower was pollinated, all of the petals fell off, and then the ovary got bigger and bigger and bigger until it became a pear. An apple can grow when the male cells join with the female cells, when the flower is fertilized. The male cells from the pollen have to reach the female cells in the ovary. This sounds easy, but it's not. The apple flower can be fertilized only by pollen from a different apple tree. Since apple trees cannot move, they can't carry the pollen themselves. They need helpers for this job. Bees are some of the apple tree's best helpers. Bees are attracted to the colorful petals of the flowers. They like the smell of the sweet flower juice, the nectar. See them all? That reminds me of the bee that I filmed in our video about pollination. Bees fly from tree to tree, collecting the nectar. They will use the nectar to make honey. As the bees gather nectar, pollen grains stick to their bodies. When they land on the flowers of other apple trees, some of this pollen falls off. The grains of pollen land on the sticky tops of the pistil tubes. The male cells in the pollen grains travel down these tiny tubes, and at the bottom they reach the ovary. Here, the male cells join with the female cells, and the flower is fertilized. So you can see a picture there. Now the petals fall to the ground. The petals are no longer needed. They've done their job. This is also like that video we watched together. The flower has been fertilized. Now an apple will begin to grow. It will begin to grow right at the spot where the flower meets the stem. So when a flower's petals fall off, it first looks like this, and then it looks like this, and then, it looks like this, and let's see on the next page what it looks like next. Whoa! And it gets bigger and bigger until it looks like an apple. As the fertilized ovary grows bigger, it forms the apple core, which holds the seeds. They will be well protected here. Around the ovary, the rest of the apple is swelling too. This is the white fleshy part that you eat. So you can see the core in the middle where the seeds are, and the inside view. This kind of reminds me of that book we looked at called A Fruit is a Suitcase for Seeds. Look at the bottom of a ripe apple. You can see bits of dried sepals left from the flower. Have you ever looked at the bottom of an apple and seen those dry, tiny little leaves? Those are the sepals. When the apple's cut open, you can see the seeds. Look carefully and you'll see 5 little compartments or sections if you cut it in half this way. It looks kind of like a star or a flower. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There may be as many as 10 seeds inside your apple. The seeds are the fertilized female cells. Apple seeds can grow into new apple trees. The apple tree must feed the growing apples by using sunlight, water, and air. The leaves make a special kind of sugar. This sugar feeds the fruit. It takes about 50 leaves to make the sugar for 1 apple. Whoa! All summer long, the apples grow bigger and riper. Oh, some of these kids are playing in some water. When fall arrives, the apples are almost ripe. During the last few weeks, the apples can feed themselves. They can make their own sugar now. The sugar makes the apples sweet. Red Delicious, Macintosh, a couple different kinds of apples. I wonder if that's why if you pick an apple or another fruit before it's ripe, it tastes kind of sour and it's not sweet. Huh. It says towards the very end, when it's making their own sugar, that's when they become sweet. I just learned something new. Ooh, there's a couple other types of apples up here. There's Golden Delicious and Granny Smith. Hey, wait a second. In the beginning of our science unit, when we were still in school, we did a taste test of 3 different kinds of apples. We had green apples, we had yellow apples, and we also had a red apple. I think it was a gala apple, so it wasn't either of these, but it was also red. Sunlight helps the leaves and the apples to make food. It also helps to change the skin color of some apples. Different kinds of apples have different skin colors. Some turn red and others turn yellow. Some varieties of apples stay green even when they're ripe. When the apples are ripe, it's time for picking. If no one picks the apples, they will fall to the ground. Animals will eat some of them and may carry the apple seeds to other places. Some of these seeds will grow into new apple trees. Oh, this reminds me of our other science video about seed dispersal called Seeds Move. So it looks like for apples, sometimes other animals might eat them and then carry them far away. And remember, they might leave the seeds in their scat or their animal poop. Some of these will grow into new apple trees. Some of the apples may just rot on the ground. After a while, they will become part of the soil. They will help to feed the tree. The apples on the ground decompose, turn back into soil nutrients. As fall ends, the trees lose their leaves. New buds are already forming. They will be next year's apples. For now, the apple tree's work is over. For you, it's time for the best part. It's apple eating time. I love apples. So today we read How Do Apple Trees Grow by Betsy Maestro. It talks about a few of the different ideas that we learned about this year, about what seeds need to grow, pollination, and seed dispersal, and some other things. It also talked about seasons. And so I'll give you a heads up for next class, for the very last science video that I'm going to make. It'll be something that we will collaborate with, and I will be inviting you to make a new model. We're not going to do that for today, but I encourage you to listen to this story again if you like. You can also go back and watch other science videos, like the one on pollination or seed dispersal, to get yourself ready for our grand finale science video next week, where we will all be combining our ideas and all the things you have learned to answer our puzzling phenomena. How do apple trees, animals, and insects work together to make new apple trees? And if a new apple tree grew and a human did not plant it, how did that apple tree grow? So we'll be solving that mystery together and creating our final science models next time. For now, I will say thank you for learning with me.